As time moves forward, as technology changes and grows, as the infrastructure of companies continue to ebb and flow, one thing remains the same. A leader has to produce. This is the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast, a transformational leadership approach that's centered around three core concepts: vulnerability, transparency, and authenticity. On this show, you'll learn how to be open and honest with yourself and with others, while also developing trust, empathy, and respect within your team. You'll learn how to empower them to take ownership of their roles and responsibilities. This is the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast. And now your host, Edward E. Mosley Jr.
Hello, everybody. We are here again for another episode of the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast, where we talk all things leadership. We have a wonderful guest today. She's full of energy. I love when we first talked and met, the energy that I think she's going to bring. And I want to bring on Karli Sherman. She is a speaker, a leadership coach, specializing in women's professional development, and is the owner of Karli Sherman Productions. And so without further ado, we want to welcome Karli to the show.
Oh my gosh, hi.
You there? You see what I mean, y'all? Everybody, what did I tell you? She is so full of energy. Karli, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. It's Mardi Gras here in South Louisiana, so I'm doing great.
Uh-oh. Did I catch you at a bad time?
We are in what I like to call deep gras.
Okay.
It's the week, like the Wednesday to Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
So the week of Mardi Gras, which is, we are right in the middle of it. We are in the deep gras.
So that means we got to get out of this podcast quick so you can go and get into the gras.
Oh, I'm so excited. I love Mardi Gras. It's my favorite holiday.
Cool. So tell everybody about Karli.
Yes.
You know, what do you do? And then on the end of it, tell us what is leadership to you? What does that mean, look like, feel like? What does that mean?
Perfect. So my name is Karli. I am 39 years old. I live in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I own my own company, Karli Sherman Productions. I'm a professional speaker and leadership coach, MC, and pageant coach. I know we sneaked that last one in there. I love being able to speak in front of people. I love helping other people level up and grow and become the best version of themselves, especially women. Part of my background comes from higher education. I spent over a decade in higher ed doing leadership training, and then decided I'm going to open my own business and go beyond the borders of the college and university life. And it's been amazing. I never intended to be an entrepreneur, so this is like something new and different that we're trying out, and I love it. I'm sold. And let's see a few other things about me. If I were a food, I would be a boudin ball. If I were a beverage, I would be champagne. If I were an animal, I'd be a unicorn. If I were a vehicle, I'd be a Mardi Gras float. And my Hogwarts house is Ravenclaw. And so what does leadership mean to me? I think leadership is social, meaning leadership is external. It's outward facing. It has to do with other people. It is not an internal thing or a solo thing. It is inherently social, and humans are social creatures. And leadership is about knowing yourself and having the confidence and self-assurance to help other people know themselves, so we can all be the best version of ourselves.
The best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down because I like that. You know what? I have never, ever had anybody to explain themselves as food, as champagne, as a Mardi Gras float. So I honestly don't know where this podcast is going to go.
We don't know. I love that.
Yeah,
it's my favorite. Like interview questions and like pageant questions. And like, if you were a part of a car, what would you? And I'm like, I just start with those. You don't have to get to them. I'll just tell you all the answers up front.
But you know what that is though? That right there is the two different lives and facades that leaders live or people live. You know, it's like how many times have you had coworkers or you've seen people where they at home they're one way
Yep.
and at work they're this other person. And that has always irritated me. And what I would tell people is whenever you see me, this is what you get.
Yep.
You know, you're gonna get Edward Moe or whatever. That's you're gonna get me that way in church, in the mall, in Mardi Gras, and the golf course. You know, you're gonna get that regardless. And so, Why do you think leaders or people live that way? Why do you think they live that way?
Okay, so one of my favorite things that I get to do in my work is personality typologies. I
Okay.
love them.
Mhm.
I teach several different ones, and I've done, I don't know, just about all of them that I can find. And what they do is you have an assessment and you are asked a series of introspective questions that try to suss out the core of how you think, what
Mhm.
drives your behaviors, your thoughts, and your actions, right? And there are some just overarching ways that humans function, and that's all these typologies are, or they try to put little boxes or categories and names around these overarching human qualities, right? And so then you get your colors or this set of words or this set of initials or whatever it is that help describe you and the way that you are. It gives you language around the way that you are, and hopefully if you answered the assessment truthfully in the way that you naturally show up in the world, then that will give you the language around how you naturally are without any other influence. If I were
Mhm.
just going to
Mhm.
be my best self at all times in ideal situations, this is the way I would be. But like you said, we're not always in ideal situations. We're not always around people who bring out the best in us. We're in stressful situations. We're in high pressure situations. We're in traumatic situations. We're in really comfortable situations. We're in
Mhm.
happy situations. And that's going to pull out different strengths or different qualities that we
Mhm.
have. And so when you say, like, at work, I'm one way and at home, I'm another way, I don't think you're actually a different person. I
Okay.
think that those spaces, those situations, and those people will activate different parts of you. And so a different color or strength
Mhm.
gets brighter and gets activated in certain situations. But I am of the philosophy that people don't change. So I don't
Okay.
change who I am. I just become more of this part of myself.
Interesting. Let me think about that.
I know.
So,
Big
so
feeling,
hold on.
people
So
don't change thing.
say what now?
People get big feelings around the belief of, like, people don't change, they just become more of who they have the capability to be. That activates some big feelings in people.
Right, and that's where I was thinking. Like, okay, so that quiet person at work. So you're saying they're really that's that piece that's coming out of them. Where they're really quiet. They're more
Might
quiet at
be.
work, but
Sure.
at home they're loud.
Or maybe their work situation is one where they don't feel safe to express themselves, so they've learned to be quiet.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I will agree. I will agree with that because I think a lot of people go into the work environment, um, and it's not a safe space.
Right.
It is not a safe space, and in some cases, it could be actual toxic.
Yes.
So they're not able to be, like you say, their true selves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I experienced that in several of my former jobs where I
Mhm.
was in fight or flight mode at all
Yeah.
times. I was
Yeah.
in survival mode. It was
Yeah.
affecting not only my mental health, but my physical health.
Yeah.
Being, like, human bodies and minds are not meant to stay in that state
Yeah.
constantly. And yeah, and so I was a very different person, different. Other parts of me were being activated that
Mhm.
really shouldn't be, that were not my natural state.
Yeah. And I was too. I mean, one, I was just in a space that was just it was very toxic.
Yeah.
You know, at the closer I got to the building, the closer I would drive to the building, just in the parking lot, my whole body just changed.
Yes.
My mentality changed. Um, I was getting headaches. I just did not want to be there, and just it was just I had to work,
Mm-hmm.
And then when I left, I noticed that every time I would leave, this tension and pressure would just it was released.
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hate it. I had the same thing. There was probably the last 6 months I was at my previous job before I started my company. I felt like I was going to throw up every time I was driving to work every single day. It was like that visceral of a reaction to this job, which was a shame because I liked the job, the actual, like my day-to-day function and what it was. It was all the surrounding bullshit that made that great job not worth it anymore.
Yeah. So why is it that we talk about change? Why is it that what takes us so long to say, you know what, I'm done, I'm out, or I'm going to I'm going to deal with it? Is it, and I like to call it self-sabotaging.
Oh, I've had to do a lot of work on self-sabotage.
Yeah. So, but what makes a person stay in a work environment that they just don't like? It is not healthy for them.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One thing that I read about in my own journey to try to help and heal myself through that was that our brains are always trying to keep us safe. And so our brains are going to tell us to do things that it is familiar with. And our brains, which is, we know one of the core human qualities is humans are afraid of what they don't know. Facts, just like baseline, we are afraid of what we don't understand and what we don't know. And so leaving that job is unknown. Therefore, your brain is going to tell you not to do it. And you could just be like tired and worn out and burnout and exhausted. And it's hard to then job search or think, what if I get a new job and it's not any better?
Yep.
But now I've wasted all this time and energy. And what if it's not any better? And I think that's our brain trying to keep us safe, and it knows where it's at. And so it wants to try to protect us from like a survival instinct. But man, sometimes you got to be like, get out of here, brain. Leave me alone. I need to take a risk,
Yeah. I have a lot of I have a lot of clients. Once we get past the why are you stuck phase, then they're able to kind of talk about where they really want to be,
Yeah.
I had one client, it took her a lot of time just to openly admit, or I should say, write down what she's been thinking about her true desires of what she wanted out of her own life. And she eventually started to open up and tell me about it. And I was like, well, have you ever wrote it down? She's like, no, I haven't. I've never wrote it down. I say, so yeah, so it just stays in your head. And the other piece I see, do we see a lot of folks in that are, I guess we call them stuck. They haven't developed. They haven't did any new development.
Yeah.
And so they decide, well, I would have to do this, that, this in order to be qualified for that. And or I just stay here. I'm comfortable here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a sense of complacency, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I hate that. I hate that if it comes from, I've been beaten down and now I just can't, I feel like I can't level up and I can't do anymore. And I guess this is my lot in life. That makes me sad, and I hope that someone would find a resource like a coach or this podcast or someone to help pull them out, or someone in their personal life, maybe, or a mentor who can reach in and try to pull them out of that. Because I've been there, I get it. It's rough when you're low and you're at this really low point to try and pick yourself up, in addition to all the other things that you still have to do in your everyday life.
Yeah.
But I like what you said, writing it down. I didn't believe this, okay? But I was told this several years ago by a professor in grad school. And she was like, writing things down has power.
Yeah.
And my grad program was like a lot of writing.
Yeah.
Very little testing, but I wrote more pages, more documents than a human should. I wrote so much. And she was like, we're writing a lot because there's an inherent power in humans putting language on something permanent. That could be a Google Doc, or it could be a literal piece of paper, or it could be a rock in a cave, whatever it is. But there is a power in writing things down, writing words, putting words to paper. And I was like, okay, you just want us to take notes and write papers, right? But then I was like, oh no, she's right.
Yeah.
She's right.
Yeah. For a long while. So I'm this kind of person that I have stickies everywhere, right?
Love
And
it.
I got stickies everywhere. If I read something that I like, I'm gonna tab it. I highlight it and tab it, because if I don't tab it, I don't know where it is in that book that I highlighted it, you know?
Facts.
So I tab it. I have, these poster boards, these sticky poster boards all in my office. And every time I get a thought of something, I write it down. It's just a thought. And I have this vision board that I've wrote down, and it's a step order. And I'm a firm believer of writing it down. It helps you visualize it, one,
Yep.
but it helps you compartmentalize it as well. So now you're seeing it, you're feeling it, you're believing it, and you've wrote that vision down. And when you can see it, that's half the battle. Because I think a lot of people, especially when they're starting their careers, they don't take the time to develop an actual plan. They're just jumping and jumping and jumping. And we're seeing right now that most employees, the turnover rate is probably at most 5 years, 3 to 5 years. That's it. That's it.
Oh yeah, me and my millennial brethren are breaking the trend of like, ain't nobody staying at a company for 40 years and retiring and getting their gold watch like our grandparents did. Like, gone are those days. Some people, sure, but the majority of us are moving from one company to another and are moving industries, like straight up switching our jobs in our 30s and 40s. Which
Now,
I think
that's
is
crazy. It's so now I do agree with you. I agree. I believe that the traditional in the factory, in a building for 30 years, 9 to 5, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, that's old.
Yeah.
Now, we went into COVID.
Changed
And
it.
a lot of organizations forcefully, whatever you want to call it, they made a pivot. They went virtual. And now we're back at this point of get everybody back to work. And of course, we're firing people now and on the federal side. But the crazy part about it is, and I can only speak from my background and my experience, is those organizations, they were able to make the pivot virtually, and they succeeded.
Yep.
Those employees were knocking it out the park.
Yep.
They were performing. Some of the performance levels went up.
Oh yeah. Most. And there's like research from even pre-COVID on remote employees that proved for years that remote work was superior for most people in most companies and industries. And COVID only reinforced those studies.
And now we're trying to put us back in that box of I need you in the building 8, 9, 10 hours a day. Right. And I've heard supervisors, I've went in and talked to various, staffs, and some of the complaints that managers and supervisors and team leads were saying is, well, we've been on Teams meetings or something, virtual meetings, and they've seen the kids running around in the background, or they may see dogs or something, and they were saying that it is not the employees. They legally are not supposed to be taking care of kids during the hours of work. And I'm sitting here like, why does it care? Why do you care?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't, right? It doesn't matter. If I walk my dog, or if I had kids, but if I could save myself what $800 to $1,000 a kid,
Right.
and I'm giving you more work.
Yes,
More
and more
quality work.
efficiency and more
Yeah.
productivity.
Yeah, more productivity, efficiency, quality of work is off the roofs. And I've even heard some human resources professionals say, "Oh well, they're not supposed to work outside of their designated work hours." And so if you're working 8 to 5, you're not supposed to work 8 to 5. But the way I saw it was, I had some clients that were in other countries, in different time zones.
Yeah.
So if I'm on a call with them at 7 o'clock at night and I can get that document completed and back and done, now that product is provided, then that's completion.
Yes.
But legally, my work hour stopped at 5 o'clock.
Right.
I'm not asking you to pay me overtime. But it got into legal issues, and so we're just so wrapped around this old traditional framework and structure of work.
Yeah.
And we're going back to it.
I hate it. It's one of the reasons I can never work for someone else ever again. I'm like feral at this point. I don't know that I think I would be fired if I worked for someone else, because I can't. I've seen like the veil has been pulled back, and I have seen the reality of, why does it matter if I'm sending an email at 11 o'clock at night if that's when I want to send the email? I'm not saying you have to send an email at 11 o'clock at night, but if I want to send an email at 11 o'clock at night because I'm a night owl, let me do it. Like, you can make me wake up at 7 in the morning and you're going to get 2% productivity out of me. But if you let me work at 11 o'clock at night, you're going to get 99% productivity out of me.
Yeah.
That's just how I am, and now I can't go back. I can never work for someone else.
And I think you bring up a real good point. We have not figured out, most leaders, most supervisors have not figured out what is Karli's sweet spot.
Yep.
What is her strengths? If I know your strengths are, like you say, you're that 11 to 6 in the morning kind of person, then I should have the autonomy, or you should have the autonomy, as long as you're getting the work done,
right,
to provide it. But I think that's the other thing. We want to put everybody in the office, structured 8 to 5 box. And we want, and half the time you're in the office, you get there at 8 o'clock. Let's just say you have varied times that employees come into work. They may start at, for instance, I know some people come in at 6. Some come in as late as 9 in the morning. And so people will start leaving about 2 in the afternoon, and some stay to 6 in the evening. Mm-hmm. And the one that comes in at 10, her thing is she doesn't want to get up and have to deal with buses and traffic and all that. So she'd rather everybody get into work. She can leave her house, be at work at 10 o'clock, and then she's off later when everybody's back home. Then the other lady, she has small kids, so she wants to get them on the bus, be at work early. So, but we don't operate like that. We're not flexible like that.
Which is such a shame. And honestly, I firmly believe it all comes down to trust, or lack of trust. There's way, way too many industries and bosses and companies who do not trust their employees. And it's built into the rules, and it's built into laws. It's built into entire systems that we do not trust our employees, which in some cases, Fair. I get it. Some people have done some weird things, and now we have to make a rule about it. And if you wouldn't have done the weird thing, we wouldn't have to have the weird rule. But now we do because somebody messed it up.
But we hired them though.
Right. And if you don't want to have untrustworthy people working for you, then don't hire them. And if you accidentally hired them, then fire them.
Yeah.
You have that power. Like, hire trustworthy people. And if they're not, then fire them. Like,
yeah.
But I think it's a complete lack of trust. And coupled with, I think there are a lot of people who are in charge in some way, whether you're an owner, a manager, a boss of some sort, and you are not in control of a lot of your life. You feel out of control for one reason or another. And this is the area where you can exert control and feel like you have control. And so I have to micromanage or oversee or track everyone's keystrokes on their computer because that's where I feel in control.
That's crazy.
Also very unhealthy.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is really good. And now you think about it, and I've always said that some people are like, the reason they're so angry at work is because they're something's going on at home, or there's something, and they bring that anger, they bring it in. But that is a great point when you said that this is the only place that they can be in control.
Mm-hmm.
So they know they can write your performance appraisal, they can write your bonuses. So you're the only person they control because they can't control the other aspects of their life.
Yep. Yeah, I saw it. My experience was the opposite. I felt very, I did not have the autonomy that I needed in my previous jobs. And so I would seek that elsewhere. And I found myself in my organizations that I was a part of. I was on every leadership board. I'm like working my way up to be president. I'm going to do this. I'm in charge. Let me make it, because I was not in control of so much of my professional life. I sought out these leadership roles to exert that kind of control in another way. And now that I own my own company and I am in full control over everything in my entire life, because I'm single, child-free, I live alone. I am in control of 100% of my life. I am no longer in any leadership position in any of my organizations. I'm just a member, which is new and different.
Right.
Because now I have that. I am in control. And so I don't need it from other places. I don't have to seek it out other places.
That is, I wrote that down. I think that's really, really a good point. I think that's something that we really have to look at. Like, no, I do believe that a lot of times we put people in leadership positions that are just managers. They're good managers of projects, but not leading people. Yeah.
They're really good at whatever your job is. And so because you were good at that, you got promoted. But that doesn't necessarily make you a good manager of people, right? It just makes you were just the best one at that job.
Because they're loyal you because you've been there for 5 and 10 years. So we're going to promote you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, just because you were good in court doesn't necessarily make you a good managing partner.
So I'm gonna tell you what's odd, right? So I was reading your bio, and I took the Myers-Briggs test years ago.
Nice.
And guess what I became? Guess what I was? INTJ.
Oh, perfect.
And then when I saw that, I'm like, I gotta look that back up again to see what that is all about, because I haven't did that in years.
Yeah.
But I do remember those were my 4 letters though. Yeah.
Yep. I'm an INTJ or an ENFJ. I just take issue with the way that they measure introversion and extroversion, mainly because Myers-Briggs, it was a mother-daughter duo. So Myers is the mom and Briggs is the married name of the daughter. And it was like, this was like in the 50s and 60s when they were doing this research. And so that was really the emergence of words, like the popularity of words like introversion and extroversion. And so there hadn't been enough research in documentation into what those words really are. And so they were very much still associated with outgoingness and shyness, which we now understand to not be the case.
Right.
That is not what introversion, extroversion are. They are a lot of times associated because people who are introverts most of the time are outgoing. And if you're introverted, you could be more likely to be shy, but they're not the same, right? It's about how you gain energy and how you process stimuli. So because of that, Myers-Briggs measurement doesn't really measure introversion and extroversion the way we now understand it to be. They measure it more like outgoingness and shyness, which is just a symptom of the time they were in.
Do you feel as though, now you talked about how you were when you were in corporate and you were going after everything. I'm finding, and we're seeing that these are facts, that a lot of organizations don't have. I would say if they have a leadership development program in place, it's very minimal. It's not fully developed. Are you finding the more successful organizations that you worked with or researched or know about, that they are more successful? Their leaders are more successful because they do have a more developed leadership program, and they're looking at Myers-Briggs and some other behavioral type platforms and programs to really understand the leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Employees don't want a pizza party.
Yeah.
We're not in 4th grade and at the book fair. Like, they don't want snacks in the break room. That's not going to truly increase employee satisfaction. Employees want they want their leaders to invest in them. And so providing training that is literal personal or professional development for the individual, which is different than training for your job, which is also important, right? You should have access to industry specific training, job specific training that can help you gain a certification in your industry or something like that. That's very job or industry specific. But what I do is not industry specific, right? Is I can teach anybody about personality typology. I can teach anybody about conflict navigation or about public speaking skills, right? And having both, the access to both for employees is an absolute game changer and core to employee satisfaction. And when your employees are satisfied, they're going to work harder. They're going to be loyal longer, because we know it's way more expensive to replace an employee than it is to train one and keep them.
I'm glad you said satisfied, because, trying to get that happy will never happen. Yeah, never happen.
Yeah, you can't make everybody happy. Just like, one movie will never make everybody happy. One type of haircut will never make everybody happy, right? Like, the same thing can never make everybody happy. But you can be satisfied. You can have increased job satisfaction because you're being invested in as a person.
So what is the one thing that when as you're helping your clients with their professional development, as you see this structure of organizations, how are you talking to your clients about their professional development? What's the next thing that you're telling them, that they should be preparing for?
Ooh, great question. I like, my focus is on making sure that you are developing as a person. So regardless of what your next job move is, I want you, or whatever is coming next in your life. Maybe it's not a job. Maybe it's that you want to move into a solid relationship and get married, right? Maybe it's you want to take you want to grow your family, whatever it is, whatever your like next move is in life. I want you to go into that being the most self-aware and self-assured that you can be, so that you can be successful with that next thing. You know who you are. Because that thing is then going to bring out more of who you are. It's going to unlock more of who you are. The more experiences we have, that's how we change, right? That's how people change. And I argue, I'm of the belief that we don't change, But through those experiences, we unlock more of us, right? And so you need to be self-aware and self-assured that you're ready to take on whatever the next thing is.
Okay, hold up now. Stop. You just said that we don't change.
Right.
What is that?
So that really comes from personality typologies. There's a school of thought in that world that says the argument is, the belief is, people don't change. All of your qualities, all of your possibilities are in you. They're just not expressed because you haven't had an experience to make that thing express or to make it manifest or make it appear, right? And so people don't change. When people say, oh, I've changed, what they mean is, according to this belief set, is I have had more experiences that have brought out more of me, and I am now a fuller person than I was before.
Okay, now. Let me think about that.
I know, right? Even if you don't agree with it, it's fascinating to think about.
Yeah, because now when you so what you're saying is, I know this is probably a crazy analogy of it, but what you're saying is, and you may totally disagree with this analogy. I didn't stop drinking as much because I wanted to change. I just realized some other things that were more important in my life, that I shifted my focus from drinking to running or something. But that's a change. I stopped doing something.
But that doesn't change like your core values of who you are as a person, right? So like something happened that activated a part of you that made you more aware of a certain quality or a way of thinking or believing or a value that you had. And drinking or running are just manifestations of, it's a way that you're expressing some quality on the inside. And that quality was unlocked because of an experience, right? And usually these are when you go through something. So you're going to unlock parts of yourself. If you go to college, college is a really intense experience where you're going to have totally different relationships and come in contact with very different ways of thinking. You're going to gain a crap ton of knowledge. You're going to have really, really good experiences and a lot of fun. You're also going to have really bad experiences for the first time. And now as someone who has done something really stupid, I now have that experience to pull from. Or I had to go through something very traumatic. That trauma unlocked more. I have discovered more of who I am because of that experience, right? And now I can use that to make different decisions.
Yeah.
And to inform my decisions. But I didn't, and that's where the people will say, oh, it changed me. Like one of my biggest things was the death of my mother, right? She died from cancer 15 years ago. And people would say, well, her death changed me. My train of thought is, it didn't change me. There was just a part of me that had never experienced a trauma like that. And after I experienced that trauma, I now had that experience to pull from. I experienced new emotions because of that. So I could now name and claim those emotions and go back to them if I need them and understand what they are. I couldn't have understood them before that. It was not an experience I had. After that experience, I now know what that emotion is. It's in a jar on a shelf. It is labeled and I understand it. And it is now a part of me. It was always inside me. I always had the capability to grieve. I just hadn't done it before. Now I have.
Okay. What would you tell that? So it's two-part question, right? So with that same mentality, all right, what would you tell that 55-year-old client? And what would you tell the 27-year-old client in that same context?
What I tell a lot of my young clients, actually, this comes up a lot when I do pageant coaching for my teen and Miss contestants who are all teenagers, and Miss is usually in your 20s. And I talk to them a lot about the fact that they all get real concerned about interview because they feel like they just haven't had enough experience and they're really worried about they're like, I don't have an answer for that. I'm like, I know you literally just have not, you're only 17. Like you only have had so many experiences in your life. That's not your fault. Right. But you can become super aware of those experiences, process the ones you have had and talk about them. Right. The 55-year-old has had way more experiences to pull from. You still need to do the work and probably do more work because you've had more experiences that you need to process from. They're just going to have a whole wealth of development that the 17-year-old doesn't because they've had more time and more experience and have unlocked a lot more parts of themselves. They've had a lot more lessons, a lot more emotions, and a lot more experience. So they're at a different place. But I think the core tenet for me is still the same. It just is going to express itself and manifest differently.
Yeah.
And our strengths are going to manifest differently over time too. And our grief manifests differently over time. And our trauma manifests differently over time. And our excitement manifests, our confidence manifests differently, right?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Karli Sherman Productions.
Ooh. Fun story. I have been thinking about this for a long time, and I've been in the leadership education game for like 15 years, maybe even longer than that. What year is it? It's 2025. 16 years?
Okay.
So I've been doing this for a while, but I did it for other people. I worked for a youth leadership conference in DC. I worked in higher education, and I advised student organizations and did leadership on college campuses. And I was like, being a speaker, being a coach was always something I had thought about, but I never wanted to own a business. That was never an interest. It was not a priority. Never was like very much not interested. Love the leadership part, not really the business part. And I found myself in a toxic job situation. I'm looking for something else. I couldn't find anything else that I really wanted to do. So I decided to create it for myself and create my own company. So here I am. I was like, yes, we're going to do it. I'm just going to take the leap. And I'm listening to other speakers, people who are doing what I wanted to do. And I'm getting a lot of messaging like, just go for it. You can do it. But what if I fail? But what if you fly?
Right.
And so then I'm like, yes, we're just going to do it. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start a business. And I launched my business in February of 2021. And I decided to quit my job. And so my last day with the university was March 2nd of 2020. And the world shut down 2 weeks later.
You won. You pitched it.
And so there I was with a fledgling business during the great pause.
Yeah.
COVID. And listen, I wouldn't suggest it. It's not a good idea. Please don't start a business at the beginning of a global pandemic. Yeah. It's not good. It doesn't go well for anyone. But listen, we're still here. I'm still making it work.
Yeah.
It's definitely been the hardest thing I've ever done. The learning curve was huge, but it's also been the best thing I've ever done. An extremely harrowing experience, but ultimately I am so much stronger. I'm way smarter. Yeah. I'm way more self-assured than I ever have been. I am living a dream I didn't even really know was my dream. And I'm getting to do some like really cool stuff that I just have left myself open to so many possibilities. Because the original plan for the company, I had an event management component that I was going to do. Oh, nope. That got shut down real quick. So the company doesn't even look like what it was originally supposed to be, right? And I think that's the cool part is I've had a lot of flexibility and adaptability through this process. And I've tried a lot of different, thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And that's been really cool. Terrifying, but cool. And now I've found my people who are women, usually professional women between the ages of 20 and 50. Yeah. Those are my people. And people who who love my brand of positive intensity, which I think is also that's a totally different topic if we want to dive into that. But I think that's something that I bring that is different and unique than most speakers or coaches, specifically women communicators. I think women, and especially white women, in our culture, positivity is very saccharine. It's very like, yay, you're doing a great job, sweetie. Keep it up. And then intensity is usually negative.
Yeah.
So people only get intense if we are angry or someone is angry with us, or if we're being scolded. And so we rarely see positive intensity. And that's something that I think I bring, is very much this like, you're awesome and we're going to do it because you're the best. Like, yes, right? Like that kind of stuff. And I don't think many women experience that, especially white women. And so it's probably my biggest demographic is bringing this positive intensity to women, which is fun.
But why do you think that is, though?
Why do we think that we don't get a lot of positive intensity?
Yeah.
I think it's a cultural thing. I think women in general in American society, and largely in the world, but as an American, I can speak on American society, that is, women are taught to be people pleasers, and we're taught to be pretty and seen and not heard, and caregivers, and we're supposed to take up less space, make ourselves literally smaller. The skinnier, the better. The quieter, the better. Women we can never be too much of anything. You can't be too skinny, but you can't be too fat. You can't be too loud, but you can't be too quiet. You can't be too bold, but you can't be too timid. And so you're supposed to like make yourself fit in somewhere in between everything. And I'm like, hate it. Hate that.
Yeah.
Rather do the most.
And I think what you're really saying is we all try to fit in this world of what we think other people want us to be.
Yeah.
What they want to see, who they want to see, and that's stressful.
It is.
That's stressful.
To try to have to perform like that all the time,
Yeah.
which is why I loved when I saw that your words were authenticity, vulnerability, and transparency. I was like, yes, say it again for the people in the back.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think I work a lot with college students. People ask me all the time. They're like, what do you think college students who are our newest employees in the world, right? Recent college grads, like, what do you think they're looking for from you as a speaker and a trainer, and then therefore from their employers, right, when they move into the work world? And I'm like, the number one quality they look for is authenticity.
Yeah.
We do not want you to bullshit them. They can sniff that out a mile away.
Yeah.
They have been sold to their entire lives. They're from commercials to pop-up ads to scammers to everyone is trying to get their attention, their clicks, their eyes, their money, and they're tired of it. And they don't want your sales. They don't want your corporate language.
Yeah.
They want you to dance around issues. They want real authenticity.
And I'm gonna tell you I 100% agree with you on that, because I was mentoring at a middle school, right? And the principal wanted me to come and talk to the teachers of the students before the teachers selected particular students to come in the mentoring program. And so I said, sure. So I went in there, and let's say it's like 50 teachers, right? These are 6th, 7th, 8th graders. And this was the first time we were going to allow the 6th graders to come in. So normally 7, 8. So now we got 6, 7, 8. And when I looked at the room of the 50 people in the room, 3 were men. 1 was a black male, and that was me. And the other 2 were the principal, who's a white male, and I think he's a resource officer, but I think he's also a teacher there. So he's kind of dual-hatted. I think he's Hispanic or white. I think he may be white, whatever. But what was fascinating was of the other 47, there were women. And of that 47 or so, like, let's just say 5 were like the assistant principal, she's a black female. And then like the other 3 or 4 were like Hispanic or a minority, right?
Mhm.
And so the question I asked them, I said, look around the room. And I said, okay, if I were to, and the problem that they were having was they were sending us kids that they thought had problems, that they couldn't talk to them. They couldn't, they wouldn't listen. They was always up and moving. And I said, here's a couple things, right? I say, first of all, the school may be the safest place that the kids have. Number 2, they may not have even, they may not even be eating at night, so they get food. So they're just happy and excited to be in a safe space.
Like literally have energy in their body.
Right. They may have the energy, right. They may not even have slept at home because they're too scared to go to sleep. And I say, so here's the other thing. I said, and I asked this one teacher, I said, where are you from, ma'am? And she said, I don't know, Texas or Kentucky. And I'm from Texas, so I'll say Texas. She's from Texas, right? And I said, if I were to literally pick you up and gave you a job in downtown Chicago, or some ghetto in Chicago or Baltimore or somewhere like that, how would you fit in? How would you talk to the student? How would you communicate to the student? And she was puzzled. She was like, I don't know. And so I was like, so all I'm saying is don't take the kid's natural, his energy or their energy to say that they're a bad child.
Right.
And I said, how many of you all know what Urban Dictionary is? Or how many of you all know how to, did you know that certain students are having conversations right in front of you and you have no clue of what they're saying?
Yeah.
So you're not even communicating or learning how to communicate with them. And that's crazy.
I know.
That is crazy.
I just learned some more words from TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
I was asking them and say, how many of you all are like, I mean, I don't think I said my age, but I'm 54. And I'm on TikTok. I'm on, all these different platforms because I want to be in the know. I want to know what they're talking about because I've been in situations where there was students or just people having conversation, and half the time they don't talk. They're doing like emojis or they're not even using the whole word anymore.
Right.
They got abbreviations, and that's where the generations are different. And so we can't say that we can't communicate to a generation if we're not trying to learn their language. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know. And it's hard to keep up with like the language. And I follow a lot of really just fun. I follow a lot of content creators who talk about generational differences, which I just think is super interesting. And some of it is they're giving legitimate information, and some of it's just for fun, right? But it's all true. I mean, it's like it's based in reality. It's why it's funny, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it talks about we're reduced to stereotypes, but it's fun. It's jokes. It's the internet for fun. But the language, man, I learned some new words, and I'm like, I have no intention of ever starting to say the Ohio Riz or a point skibbity toilet.
Right.
Like, that's never. We're not going to do that. I love you, Gen Z and Gen Alpha. That's yours.
But they're in the workforce now.
They are. Yeah.
So you take a baby boomer who's that 75-year-old supervisor trying to motivate or even communicate with that 21-year-old.
Yeah.
Or that 22-year-old that's freshly out of college. They don't know how. I
know. And I'm thinking it's like, I don't think you have to know what Riz or skibbity means if you're a 75-year-old boomer.
Right.
I think you do need to understand that the way that you see the world and the way you understand the world or professionalism or your job is not the only way. And there are other ways of thinking. There are other ways of believing. There are other ways of speaking. There are other ways of dressing that are legitimate and that have value, right? And I think that's really what it comes down to. It's easy to say, oh, I don't know what skibbity riz means. Your whole generation is unprofessional. Yeah. Well, I think we used a very surface level example to say something a lot deeper. I think what you just said was, I don't understand your generation and the way that you think and feel and believe, and I think it has less value than mine.
Yeah.
That's not okay. That's what I don't like. And I think that's why Gen Z and after them, Gen Alpha, who are still kids, but I think they are super interested in authenticity and vulnerability. And they would much rather that boomer be like, yeah, I don't know what words you're saying, but you're doing good work. So let's find a way that we can communicate together about our work, so maybe you don't say skibbity riz and I don't say something else stupid that boomers say. I don't know, whatever, but we can work together. I think they would appreciate that 100 times more.
Yeah, I believe you. Hey, Karli, I had a wonderful conversation with you today.
This has been fantastic. Yeah. I have had so much fun.
Yeah, me too. So tell our listening audience, give them some Karli advice. Give them some Karli advice.
I have a lot of life philosophies, a lot of them. One of my favorites is, you do not have to make yourself smaller to make someone else feel bigger. No, absolutely. That's what we're not going to do, is make ourselves smaller to make someone else feel bigger. You are also not required to light yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. There's other ways to keep someone warm. We do not have to self-destruct in the process. And give it a little sparkle, baby. Just give it a little sparkle. Don't be afraid to be extra. Don't be afraid to carry a full rhinestone cup or wear a tiara or wear the dress, wear the shoes. Go to the grocery store in a formal gown. Life is short. Let's add some whimsy. Light a candle, and when you're peeling your garlic, say, let me take your jacket, sir. Right? That stuff. Insert a little whimsy into your life. I think that's going to make... We talked a lot about satisfaction, job satisfaction, but just there's ways to make little magic in your own life. Find the whimsy.
Yeah, I like it. I do. And I agree with it. I think we can be so formal sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think you need the goofy.
Yes, have fun.
I think I did a video. I think it was when COVID started, and this video, I don't know how many hits it got, but it was fun. And what I did was I went outside in my robe. I had this robe on. I had some shorts on and a robe, right? And the whole conversation as I walk in the door, I was going to say, this is how I'm coming into work these days. And I went outside and I opened the door and I had the camera set up, and I came in the door and I slammed the door. I was like, and I threw my robe. This is how I'm coming into work these days, in my robe.
I love it.
But yeah, but it was just fun. It was fun, And a lot of people, I say stuff or I know stuff. They're like, how do you even know that? And I'm like, it was on TikTok, or it was on Instagram, or it was wherever, or and I try to look at various different outlets,
Yes.
Because as much as people put stuff out there, they're actually hiding. They're hiding something. They're masking, because this. Everything and everybody ain't always polished.
Right.
Yeah. But that's the perception that some of social media has put in the atmosphere is, this person is always here when they're really crying on the inside.
Yeah. And you're not born knowing how to do everything. Like that influencer who makes really great videos and looks amazing that's their job to do that. And they learned how to do that. They weren't born knowing how to make a good video. You weren't born knowing how to play the guitar. You weren't born knowing how to drive. You had to learn how to do all of that. Yeah. So like, you're gonna suck at anything you start doing. Everyone sucked at it. Yeah. We all sucked when we started walking. We fell on our faces as toddlers. Like, we all suck at things when we start. That doesn't mean you shouldn't start. That doesn't, you're not going to be at that level, that professional level when you start, but you can get there.
Yeah. Well, Karli, again, I want to thank you for coming on the show out of your Mardi Gras time. I know you finna go party somewhere.
I love Mardi Gras.
Well, I thank you for coming on the show. I had a blast.
Me too. Yeah. This was great. I love your energy. Great questions. Yeah. I think this is going to be a good episode. Listen, I mean, I may be a little biased, but
right. I like how you did that. Yeah. But again, thank you for coming on the show. And it was nice meeting you. And yeah. So I just like to say, I just like to end the show and just say peace. Peace.
You've been listening to the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership podcast. Edward E. Mosley Jr. has 30 years of leadership experience and is an ICF credentialed leadership coach. And it's his passion to inspire leaders who can foster a safe space where they can empower their followers to take ownership of their roles and responsibilities while sparking collaboration and creativity. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But until then, find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edward E. Mosley Jr. To contact the show, send your emails to limitlessboundsteam@gmail.com. See you next time on the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast.